And I'm just going to begin. All right, welcome everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Business Builder Podcast. I have Coach Christopher Lowe to separate the Chris's in our group. And you are with Southwestern Student Coaching.
That's correct.
Correct. All right, and we were just kind of talking about that. So what is Southwestern Student Coaching? And then we'll get into the nitty gritty, right?
Sure. At a high level, Southwestern Student Coaching is life skills coaching and accountability coaching for teens and young adults. Southwestern as an organization has been around for over 140 years in various things. And one of their biggest success stories is in their business and executive coaching division. And so one of the partners in that division has a very successful team and said, hey, why aren't we doing this for teens and young adults and helping families? And so he took the initiative to basically take the material that we were using for successful salespeople, executives, leaders, managers, and make it more palatable for a teen audience. So our coaching really applies the same principles that you would a top leader in your industry, but also palatable for a teen's audience and helping families to overcome some of the motivation challenges and things that kids go through.
Yeah, because I have an example with my own son. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah,
but
sure.
So it started as business and executive coaching, and then they said, hey, let's go after the younger people too, because this is also going to be valuable to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was very noticeable during COVID when all the kids were at home and the parents who had been coached are like, oh man, my kid needs coaching. And so it was kind of a result of, spending more time with your kids and realizing, hey man, like I can only do so much. We always say you can't be a prophet in your own land because it falls on deaf ears. So having somebody else that's not mom, not dad, giving them some guidance, it seems to land better than a parent trying to give the same advice.
Isn't that always the way you're in? So you brought this. Let's talk about this because the story. I like the story. You guys are going to get the story.
You're going to get the story. So one of the things that really showed me I was on the right path. I started to work with Southwestern Student Coaching, and it's an endeavor. I'm an independent business owner, and I'm kind of working for them, but I'm really working for myself. So I wasn't sure I was on the right path. And the last day of our certification, I'm feeling really good about the mission. And prior to this training, they had asked me a couple things about my value system and what are some principles that you believe in? And I didn't know what they were doing with it. And so the last day of training, they gave us this beautiful gift, which is a compass, because they always say, what's your compass telling you? Is it telling you you're doing the right thing? Is it telling you to do the wrong thing? But anyway, when you open it up, now I'm trying to do this in video and it's less compelling, but when you open it up, this beautiful compass has all of the principles and characteristics that I use to define myself. And it was really meaningful, probably one of the most meaningful gifts I've ever received professionally, because it showed that they really wanted to know me as a person and as a coach. And that's what we do for our students and our clients. We want to know them, their individual goals, who they are versus who somebody else is telling them they are. So this resonated with me. I'm an Eagle Scout. You give me a compass. There's all sorts of dual meetings for it. So anyway, this was a really special gift, and I look at it every day, and it reminds me of the values that kind of guide me.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, that's such a cool thing to have. When I first started teaching, like Krav Maga, one of the dudes was an amateur knife maker, and he's like, I got you this gift, and he brought me a piece of metal that was sharpened into a knife, and I was like, cool, my first gift.
Yeah, man.
I was like, well, what do you get a martial arts instructor? Like some weapon of destruction, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know what those swords are you put on the wall. But,
yeah. I got a ton of those. So that was a bit of the backstory there. But what was it that made you jump into doing this as opposed to something else? Because I read on your bio you were headed in a different direction, and you're like, oh, I'm going to make a left turn or a right turn and go this way.
Yeah, so I've always worked with students in some capacity for the last 20 years. I've worked with school districts, universities. I feel like even my master's degree is in school counseling, and I have a certification in that. So I feel like I have always tried, actually, the truth is I tried to be a school counselor, but I had a career as a salesperson, and a really great principal called me to tell me he wasn't going to hire me. And I said, oh, but this is the weird call. I just spent all this money on this degree. And he says, hey man, you have been making so much more of an impact on the outside, impacting students, selling them something. Your reach is exponential. You're going to be really feeling stifled sitting in an office at one school site, and
Right.
we're a lot slower to change from within than we are from bringing people in from the outside. So he gave me this advice at the time. I didn't want to hear it, but it was really good advice to try to make an impact from the outside. And I remembered that. So I started a business that I curate curriculum and resources for teachers and school administrators. And I stumbled upon Southwestern Student Coaching as another thing to bring to schools and to families. And I just connected with it on so many levels.
Yeah.
You know, the counselor in me, the helping professional in me, you know, and then hearing that principle in the back of my mind saying, hey, you can make more of an exponential impact here. So that's, I think, why I decided to work with them. But also as a parent, I could see, you know, how often I tell my son something, but then one of his friends gives him the same advice, and oh my gosh, the guy is so brilliant that he gave him the same advice Dad's been saying for, you know, ever. And so this whole premise of having another resource that is not your parent telling you some wisdom to help shape your future is pretty compelling, and I wanted to be a part of it. So.
Right. That's that's pretty good, dude. What an insightful principle. Is like, no, man, you need to be on the outside making waves, right?
Yeah, it wasn't good information. Like, I didn't want to hear it at that moment. I had just finished a master's degree, had passed all my exams. I also took coursework to be a mental health counselor, and so felt like I had all these other paths that I was going to be taken down, and somehow, I don't know if you believe in higher powers or you know, this message came to me, and it's kind of resonated with me ever since, and I kind of have tried to carve a path out doing just that. So.
I think you've done well. I mean, so we'll talk about overcoming challenges, like, or, you know, that would have been one, but what was something else that came up that was like a big roadblock, and how did you get past it?
I think my biggest challenge, being a helping person, being an empathic person, and being a dad, I think I've always prioritized others over prioritizing my own maybe career ambitions or other things. And I feel like there have been so many times in my life where I have prioritized others over myself and not given the attention to my professional life, you know, and so that I think has been the hardest thing to figure out. Asking for help. Like, I've had to find somebody to help me pick up the kids after school so that I don't lose 3 hours out of my day to, you know, run them to all the activities and things. So I think being a parent and an entrepreneur has been probably the biggest obstacle to overcome, but I'm figuring it out as I go. And, you know, and it's not like I've cracked the code just yet. But,
well, the thing is, nobody has, right?
So
like I don't care what anybody says. It's like, no, until the day we die, nobody's got it all figured out. You know.
So that's essentially, you know, I would say the biggest obstacle, and I think it's still an obstacle that I have to remind myself to prioritize me every day. You know?
Right.
So, not in a selfish way, but
it's like the oxygen mask thing, right? Like if you're not functioning, nothing else is functioning.
Exactly.
And so you do need to take that time for yourself, because otherwise everything will start to decay around you.
Yeah.
And then that's worse.
Sure.
You know, it's like, because it's not just you. Like, you want to be like a Fight Club and just like self-destruction, right? That's, you know, we could go down that path. But if you take everybody down with you, including your kids, I mean, then you're just a bad person, you know? So.
And also, you want to be a good role model to them about work ethic and putting the time in and building something.
Yeah.
And so I remind myself, like, you're showing them how to create something and how to stick to it and have perseverance and prioritize your you know, things that are important to you. And I can't always just say, well, families, and I'm always a family first kind of guy, but it can't, in every situation, that's not always necessary.
Right.
You can ask for help and have people,
Yeah,
support you along the way.
Look, man, Jesus had 12 dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like everybody needs help at some point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when was the turning point where it started to turn around? You're like, wait, I can make a career out of this. I can make a life out of this. Like this, I can sustain my family this way.
Well, I mean, I still think I'm figuring that out as I go, but I think the biggest epiphany is I've worked for other people for 20 years, and I've always had more of a side hustle approach to doing some things on my own. And I had kind of a wake-up call happen to me. I helped a company grow really significantly during COVID as a sales rep. Covered about 13 states, did a really amazing job.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, I did an amazing job of getting people to know this brand, and the brand took off, and I was the top performing sales rep every year, and sadly they made a business decision to go a different direction.
Of course.
And I didn't see that coming.
Right.
Because my loyalty and my connection to this organization, which was a family-run company, and they're a great organization. They make a great product. I just didn't see it coming from a business perspective, and that was the only reason I was given. So
they said it's not you; it's a business decision. You're like, really? Well, if I'm bringing you money all the time and I'm your top producer year over year, what kind of business is it?
Well, I think in that world, I learned that I created an awareness among their channel distributors that would now know who the brand is and that would order that in the future.
We don't need you anymore.
Correct. So
thank you for getting us known.
Yeah,
but
yes and no. And so, but during that journey, I had met a lot of guys that were not the big companies that were reselling my products, and there were smaller guys that were doing just fine, just selling my product. And oh, by the way, they also sold like 4 or 5 different other things too. And one guy probably had 110 things on his, and he was approaching his late 70s and still hustling, going into Compton schools in California. That guy's name's Jerome, and it inspired me. I'm like, Jerome can do this in his late 70s. I can try to do this. And so that was kind of the turning point. I was like, I had moved cross country, family, my parents are aging, and I was living on the West Coast. I wanted to be back on the East Coast. And I felt like it was the time to like, hey, let's use some of my network in this world to say, hey, a lot of people that are doing this. Why don't you start talking to them and start creating something of your own? And that's kind of what I did. And, it's a work in progress. I'm still getting there, but I feel like I've had a really solid network that came out of that failure per se. In failure can be a lot of opportunity and
we'll talk about that in a second. It's right there. There it is.
Yeah. And then this was an opportunity. I sold my home in California for thankfully a decent profit, and that helped to fund this enterprise a little bit and to move my family cross country. And so here I am, with less of a network in North Carolina than I had on the West Coast. But
I believe we can do something about that. Right?
but that's the goal, is like, to try to get people to know who I am, but also who these great organizations that I partner with are. So, and one of them being Southwestern Student Coaching. So
right. So we talked about sacrifices earlier. Besides that, is there something that jumps out? I mean, and that's a pretty big one, like having to sacrifice your own kind of downtime or whatever, or putting everybody else first. I mean, that is a bit of a sacrifice. But as parents, we do it all the time. Was there anything else that was like something that you were like, man, I really like? That's the thing. Work-life balance, I don't think exists, right?
Yeah.
It's like something has got to be more important on the day. Sometimes you drop everything because like I have to do this for my kid, right? My kid needs me now. This is super duper important. Nothing else can be more important than this. And other times you got a project coming through. It's like, if I don't get this job done, son, we're not eating for next month, right? So it's like, sorry, I'm going to have to do this. So is there anything else on the personal sacrifice side that stands out, that just jumps out at you?
Man, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go
So we could go as deep or as shallow as you want. So this is not, you don't have to give full disclosure here.
I would say high level. I think that the category is the same. I was married for a long time to the mom of my children, and she was very successful in her career, and I think that I often saw, again, you think your life's not going to be any different. This is your life for the future. And so I think I sacrificed career growth early in my life and prioritizing work earlier in my life to now play catch up a little bit at this point in my life. I don't know if that's exactly the question.
No, but it's a good point, because one of the guys I like on YouTube, his name's Alex Hormozy, and he's like, look, you can have he's like, you got two options here. You can party your way through your 20s and show up in your 30s skill deficient, or you can forego all of that stuff, build yourself in your 20s, and then when you get to your 30s, then you have a skill set and something that you can use to make income with or generate income with. You can build your skill set all through it. He's like, but you can't do both. Yeah. You know, it's it's almost impossible to do both.
I think maybe the mistake I made in that a little bit was to always kind of like what you said, like, okay, this is what I need to do for my family right now, you know, and not worry about the impact of bouncing, you know, from company to company, or like, oh, we just moved cross country and I had to restart my life again, you know, and just not maybe being more like firm and like, well, how is this going to affect my, like, I think it had a lot to do with me just prioritizing others and not thinking long term of how that was going to affect me at now 47 years old, feeling like I'm hustling like I am in my 20s again to try to like build something for myself. But the great thing about that is, and to your point though, is I thankfully got skills along the way, made some great relationships along the way that I think are now going to
they'll pay off.
Yeah, but I do wish that I had focused a little bit more on my career trajectory early on, and so I think that, I don't know that that's a sacrifice to get here, but that's kind of,
well, it's like, a missed opportunity in a lot of ways. Right.
So I feel like I would love to be, you know, thinking I'm on easy street at this point in my career, thinking about when am I going to retire, and now I'm just thinking about like, oh, how am I going to get through the next 30 years of my life, you know? And so
it's like retirement.
So
we'd be bored anyway.
It's true.
You know, it's like I've been doing this entrepreneurial thing for 10 years, and so it's like, I don't know if I could go and work for somebody else and do it. You know what I mean? So, screw y'all.
Hey, that's growth, man.
That's growth, right? Yeah, right. That's
being present for you right now. You know.
So, customer impact story. When was a time where what your service or product did for somebody that was like significant impact on their life?
As I'm newer to the student coaching world, I often have to rely on other people's stories. But I'm going to share one that I will speak in code a little bit, but the moral of the story is correct. So working with this one family, they ended up not being able to, coaching wasn't right for them at this moment.
Right.
But just talking, so the process is we talk to the parents to get to know the student first, right? And then we see if it makes sense that they think that their teen or young adult would be interested in doing this and have the commitment to doing it. So then we do kind of an initial coaching session with the student. And so this particular family, the parent session was very emotional. You hear a lot about how much parents care about their children and some of the struggles that they're going through. You know, sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's emotions and stuff that comes out with that. But one of the things that this family talked about is there was a really big breakdown in communication between dad and son. And even though we didn't work with this family, we just talked about a couple strategies just in the initial conversation. And then when we spoke with the student, there was an emotional reaction to the same thing, and he brought it up. And so it was really an amazing moment to see the timing that they both knew this was something they wanted to fix. And I have since heard some feedback from the family that the dad and son's communication is a lot better. Dad has made some changes that were suggested and some strategies, and it's really impacting their communication with each other, which, we didn't even have to coach this kid.
Right.
It's already making an impact. And, hopefully, I don't know if coaching will ever be in their future down the road, but if it is, we're here for it. But what was really great about that is just to see even that, like just a little bit of a mindset shift in these two people made a really amazing impact. And I can only, that was my personal experience. We have tons of stories. We've helped kids get off drugs. We've helped kids go from, well, we're not therapists, but kids that were really depressed and unmotivated to going and getting, a 6-figure job in their early 20s.
Oh yeah.
To change that, mindset and giving them a vision for a future that is not the doom and gloom that they've been thinking it could be, and helping them get to a future. So we have a lot of stories like that, but my personal story was just watching this family, even with very small adjustments to communication. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Got good.
Well, so it's already on the right path, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So since you touched on it, and I watched your video on this, it was a good video, by the way. Yeah. I liked it. I think it was I liked and commented, and I subscribed. So check out his YouTube channel.
Well, I'm a new content creator, not as good as this guy just yet, but
please,
ambitious.
Please. But your video was about the difference between therapy and coaching, and I think that is something that is important to talk about and to discuss and to know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same thing. They each have they address a different area of improvement, let's call it. And I liked how you broke it down. Sure. So break it down right here for us.
Okay. So I think I have a very unique perspective because I did train as a mental health counselor, and so I was trained to do therapy, right? So I understand what therapy's goals are and one of the things that therapy is designed to do is to really take a really good look at your past, struggles, challenges, traumas, all that kind of stuff, and make some adjustments to have a better present and to fix what happened before to make right now happen. And I think that is very, very important. And in some cases, it's very, that work needs to be done before any coaching can be done, because you have to be in a good mental headspace, and it's a valuable resource for families. But it really does focus on past and present, and coaching really focuses on, okay, what do you want your future to be like? And we help them kind of design a vision for what their future is going to be, and then we'll help with some goal setting. And then a lot of it, though, I'll be honest, and I am very guilty of this, is the positive self-talk that goes along with those goals. Because we are really mean to ourselves. We say, I don't know about you, but I am very hard on myself. I say some really negative stuff in my brain, and it starts shifting my mindset. And we train on having an attitude of gratitude, being grateful, positive self-talk. So I think that while coaching talks a lot more about what your future is going to be like, and therapy talks a lot about what your present is going to be like, sometimes you need to improve both simultaneously. Sometimes you need to do the work in therapy before you can be in a good place to do coaching. So I don't know if that was a good...
No, it's a great answer. It's a great answer. I think
it summarize it, but that's what I would say. Yeah,
it will provide some insight as to which one is which, because I'm so... let me not say what I really feel. Screw that. I'm very... I think that I agree. Both has a place. I think there's this overemphasis on therapy right now, and it's like when people say, "Well, everybody needs therapy." No, they don't. That's like saying everybody needs a car, everybody needs a gun, everybody needs to eat 1,000 grams of protein every day. It's nonsensical to make an absolute statement like that when you have no way of measuring if that's even true or not.
Sure.
So, can therapy help a lot of people? Yes, but as you said, therapy is about the past and present. At some point, it has to end, right? If you're in therapy for 6+ years, what are you doing, right? And if that's the case, if you're in therapy for year over year over year over year over year, I would say that is ineffective. You know what I mean? I mean, what?
Well, from a counselor perspective, I would challenge you to say like, hey, there's always something that comes up, and how you're responding to those things in every given thing. It's always good to have a sounding board and have somebody that you can bounce off.
Sure, but that's not therapy. That's a friend.
Sometimes you can't always share the internal struggles you're facing with a friend. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. You know,
right.
But that's not always.
But then that would be the case for therapy. But if you're coming back for the same thing over and over and over again, either you have an ineffective therapist or you just don't want to put the work in. It's one of the two. Yeah. And I would challenge therapists on that level. It's like, look, if you don't start making progress here, we're going to have to do something else. Yeah. Without investment and commitment on that person's end, it doesn't matter what therapist you go and see.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there were a lot of therapeutic modalities that encouraged therapists to not give any kind of advice and to kind of guide the client to come up with the decisions on their own. And I think the one thing I like about coaching is you can kind of kick them in the butt a little bit and say, hey, you said you wanted to do this, this, and this. Yeah. And these were the goals you had set out.
This is what it takes.
And so you can really go back to saying, hey, we talked about, this is your vision, right? Or does your behavior this week, did that align with any of your goals or your vision? And you can hold people accountable because it was something that they came up with, because that's the goal from the beginning.
Right.
Whereas therapy, sometimes that can take months, years for somebody to come to those realizations themselves, right?
So, but I don't know, man. I don't think. I think unless you have a severe, or not even severe, but unless you're like actually mentally impaired, or what's the term? Disabled, right? Like an actual brain disability to process thoughts and emotions. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna quote normal here, right?
Disorders,
right? Whatever it is. Unless you have a
diagnosis,
that's the word I'm looking for. Like unless you have some like actual diagnosis, like your regular Joe should be able to deal with this stuff, unpack it, unprocess it within the time span of a year.
Sure.
You know, it's like, look, because we've all seen it. We've all of us, and I'm sure you've seen it in your practice, your coaching practice, inside and outside. Somebody got hit with something that was just life altering.
Yep.
And you've seen both ways. You've seen somebody crumble and fold and be out of it for years. Mm-hmm. And you've seen somebody take it and right on the chin, get back up and just keep going like it's nothing else. What's the difference between those two people? You know what I mean? One of them is this, it's a mindset. Mm-hmm. One, it's a resilience mindset, it's a growth mindset, and the other one's like, well, this happened and it's over. It's like, but your past does not have to define your future, and it shouldn't, I don't think. Yeah. Because you can take it just like you did. You're like, wait a second, I'm gonna go this way, you know. Yeah. So even though you had this past and you have a master's and you did all this stuff, and you were like, well, I got fired for this job. It was a stumbling block. Yeah. But you didn't wallow in it for 10, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Yeah. You were like, okay, I got to make a change and keep going.
I got to feed my family.
That's a big motivator.
Yeah. So but what you're talking about is grit and persistence and grit. There's a really good book out called Grit by
Angela Duckworth.
That talks about it, because that's something that's hard. Like she did this study about, looking at two groups of kids in Chicago public schools and which one, was going to go on to graduate. And they figured out that the common characteristics of success, and failure in this particular group, and she did lots of studies all over, but was grit. And the kids that could get hit on the chin and get back up again, and versus like, well, I can't because this happened to me, and the victim mindset versus, hey, stuff's going to happen.
That victim mindset is...
So go through. I mean, hey, we're all, depending on the situation, we're all guilty of being in that from a time to time, but stay in it.
I was in it for like a year.
Yeah.
And myself. So, I mean, so I'm yelling at myself here.
Yeah. Oh, I get it, man.
And
same.
But I got hit with something, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, this is totally upside down. Why is this like this? Yeah. I'm like, and I could not fathom why the thing was happening. Yeah. And then somebody was like, finally, somebody close to me was like, shut up. Listen to yourself. And I was like, what? It's like, you sound like a victim. I was like, but it's true. I got like that happened. I'm not talking about stuff that didn't happen. This happened. And she goes, and what are you going to do about it? And I was like, well, you know,
Good question.
I said, you know what? Hold on a second. I have to call you back.
Yeah.
Because I had to get off the phone, and I got blank pieces of paper, and I think I wrote like 8 pages of what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then 2 days later, I called her back. It was my mom. And I called my mom back, and I was like, Mom, I'll have you know, I have a plan now. And she's like, well, you sound better. And I was like, I am. Thank you. But it wasn't only her. There were a couple of my friends that they were trying to tell me in a soft way, and my mom had just got tired of it, you know. Yeah. And she's like, shut up, listen to you. You sound like a victim. That's
love right
and
there.
She goes, are you a victim? And I was like, no. And she goes, well, you sound like it. And I was like, I'll get back to you, Mom. I gotta go.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, that's amazing. It's, you know, I'm realizing, I just read another book on mindset, you know, growth versus fixed mindset. And I'm realizing, as much as you can have a growth mindset overall, there are some things in your life where you're very fixed mindset on, and you're very like resistant to like see other perspectives. And I'm now challenging myself just in a day-to-day, like, is that fixed mindset or is that a growth mindset? And just to shift it, because you can get stuck there very easily, right? Sure,
but I think that, you know, again, there's like, what was the song, like, to everything turn. Yeah. There is a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place to have that fixed mindset, and a time and a place to have that growth mindset.
For sure.
No, it's like, if my kid comes to me and says, Dad, you know, can I do heroin? I'm going to be like, no, son. It's but if he's like, well, hey, Dad, you got a fixed mindset. I'm like, I'm always going to have a fixed mindset on hard drugs, dude. I'm always going to say no to that.
Exactly.
When you're an adult, you can do whatever you want. When you're 18, you're paying for your bills. You're not living under my roof and my rules. That's fine. You go out and do all the drugs you want to, but just know what my voice is going to be saying in the back of your head is like, don't do that. You know, I would prefer it. I would greatly endorse not doing the hard drugs, right? Don't do drugs, kids.
Nancy Reagan just said no.
What's a behind-the-scenes story that people wouldn't know but would find interesting?
Oh, I don't know what people would find interesting.
Well, you never know. You never know. This is interesting.
Well, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think a funny anecdote that I usually put on like my coaching bios and stuff like that is that as a kid, my cousins were in this like a talent agency, model agency thing, and they had headshots and, you know, an agent and all that. And I was a musical kid and did theater and stuff at a young age. But anyway, so there was this open casting call for the new Mickey Mouse Club, you know, the one that Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears
and
all
Christina Aguilera were in.
So I went to Radio City Music Hall and stood in line, you know, with all these people with their headshots in their hand, and I had gotten into a little situation on the playground the day before and had a black eye. And so I'm sitting in this line without headshots, waiting to go to this audition. I'm like, why am I here? And the crazy thing is, I not only went past the first round, I made several like cuts, and they, you know,
get out of here,
because I guess I had a scrappy black eye look. I played the cello, like I just didn't, you know. I guess I sang a little bit, and so I'm not sure if they made me do choreography or not, but that's where I always going to fail because I just can't dance. But I try, but I'm terrible at it. But anyway, did not work with Brittany and Justin on that, but
that was a tough crowd.
It was a really fun, you know, experience, and, you know, most people can't tell a story like that.
That's
so,
right.
You know,
that's why I got it.
That might be interesting. Look, I don't know.
You know what that's called, man? Grit. That's grit. They were like, this kid's got grit, man. He shows up with no headshots. He's got a black eye.
Yep.
It was like, he could play the cello. It's like, but then, you know, look, how many of us could actually compete with like Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Christina Aguilera?
And I don't think they were on that open casting call. I think they were already.
They were like, we got these three. We're just, you guys are going to be the people standing behind these three.
Yeah.
You mentioned this guy before. You brought up the 70-year-old guy, but what is the best piece of advice you've ever received about running the business or being a coach?
Well, I'm going to say I really like Gary Vee. I don't know if
Love Gary Vee. I love Gary Vee, man.
Gary, so my family, my mom is from Italy, and so while I wasn't born in another country, I feel like I was raised in an immigrant household.
Right.
Even though my dad's from Florida, mom kind of ran the show, and so it was definitely more of like an Italian immigrant experience. And Gary Vee grew up like 2 towns over from me. We're around the same age, and so like our stories are a little similar. I didn't become an empire of media yet.
Right. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
That's what he said. I'm waiting for you, Gary. But anyway, I just really enjoy. He talks a lot about kindness. Like you don't have to be so ambitious that you can be unkind to be successful.
Right.
And he also, talks a lot about, I'm trying to think like one of his best quotes. He goes, I don't think I'm a great salesperson. I'm just really good at talking about things I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that has defined my career from the get-go. People always say, well, my perception of sales is like, that slimy used car salesman. And I'm like, I've never felt like I've had to be that person ever.
Right.
Because I've never worked with an organization. Well, that's not true. I've never wanted to work with an organization that I wasn't aligned with the values and believed in the product that I was talking about. So I feel like I resonate with those 2 things that he says. There's no reason to be unkind in business. And also, if you're really passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work, And so.
Yeah, and also too, I think that even from the 70s and 80s perspective of sales, right? Because it was like you had my first introduction to sales was like watching something on TV where it's like you got the traveling salesman or somebody's like, we're going to close this deal. Like, what's it going to take to get you to sign or whatever?
Coffees for closers.
Yeah, coffees for closers, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the way sales are done anymore. And I love, like, I don't know if you've, do I have the book? I don't know, but I may have read it on a Kindle or whatever. But he has the one that's like a jab, 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 cross. Which is basically the what Gary figured out early on in YouTube. He was a YouTube early adopter. That's why he had the wine channel and all that kind of stuff. But
which was also down the road from where I grew up, which is also just this cool origin story.
I would love to go in there, man, just to see, because it's like a homage, right?
I think is what it's called.
Yeah, wine library. Yeah. So, but what he understood, the thing that he got that a lot of people didn't get at the time was he was like, this is a way to connect with your clients and to connect with your audience, a way to get them to know you, because no matter what the medium is, people will still only do business with those who they know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. Well, almost everybody on planet Earth knows who Gary Vee is because he's everywhere. Yeah. And he did that on purpose. And you have to know him, and then, they have to like you to build the trust. Yeah. So that's what he did. And that kind of changed how I looked at it. I was like, oh, I get where he's going now. So he's not trying to sell you anything. He's just trying to, he wants you to buy, but he's not selling. Mm-hmm. He's offering information. Yeah. And that's what the jab, 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 right cross is. It's you give, you give, you give, you give. And he's like, really, this is what I like that he says, like, you want to give away so much value to people for free that they feel guilty for not buying something from you. So that whenever the offer comes and you make the ask, they're like, oh, well, I have to buy it because I've got so much stuff for free. And actually, that has worked on me because some of the stuff, like I do this, right? Mm-hmm. This is what I'm doing. And there was a program out there that these guys on YouTube, it's called Think Media, and they have like, we have a course that we offer to teach you how to do this kind of stuff. And I was like, I've been watching their videos for months, and them and one other creator have the best stuff about how to get started. Not only the why, but the how, and the what. It's like, here's what you do, here's why you do it, here's how you do it. And it's like fantastic. And so then finally they're like, oh, and we have this course. I was like, sold. Yeah. I was like, I'm done. I'm in it, right? Yeah. So I'm going to write it off anyway, but I was like, it was a no-brainer, right? Yeah. So, well, you mentioned this before, the evolution of the brand. So how has this evolved from what it was to what it is now, and then where do you see it going in the future? Because I know you've got like 2 kind of paths here. Yeah. It's like me as a coach and then me selling the thing, right?
Yeah. So my role, so there's a couple layers to that. Like, so my role as a student coach with Southwestern is I can build my own coaching practice, which I'm looking to do, but I feel like I can have a greater impact bringing as many families as possible to coaching for the other coaches that we work with on our team. And so that's like the biggest thing that I'm passionate about. We have one coach, he trained Olympic athletes, swimmers for the Olympics. We have another guy that played D1 football. He's wrote, I think, 2 or 3 books. Just a really compelling guy. He's worked with youth for, I want to say 20 years. And another guy that is a pastor, essentially, and he has had his own church. He also works a lot in youth ministry. So we have a lot of clients that some of their goals are not just aligned to academics or athletics, but also their spiritual journeys. And so he's a great person for that. And then we have a whole host of women on our team that pair really, really well with some of the young girls in the families that we're talking to, and so we try to align our female students with our female coaches and male students with our male coaches, but sometimes it works out differently. But I feel like we've got an amazing group of coaches that I want to bring as many families to, and I think we're growing. We're doing some really interesting stuff for foster youth through a nonprofit. There's a bunch of neurodivergent clients coming on board that we're going to have people that specialize in working with neurodivergent.
What does that mean?
It could be autistic, could be ADHD, could be on the spectrum, and so there's just a little different kind of adaptation we have to do to some of our content to make it effective for that audience. But I love and I'm really passionate about all of the people on our team, not just building my own practice. And maybe that's the Gary V coming out of it. Because I want, and so I've been bringing people on board, and some of the guys on our team are saying, well, why aren't you coaching them? And I was like, because I think they'll be great with you. And I think that, so I have to learn to take some time to have my own practice grow, because I'm trying to do both of those things. And then I also have a business that I have some salespeople working with me that sells curriculum to school counselors and school administrators, and I have a couple more partnerships coming on board. So I think your question was like, where do I see this going? Was that?
Yeah.
So I mean, the goal would be to be the go-to guy for parent workshops and things for student coaching, and to really talk to as many families as I can about the coaching piece, but also to provide as many resources to school counselors as I can, because coming from a school counselor background, the ideal school counselor is supposed to have 250 to 350 students on their caseload. Most of them have 800 plus, or multiple buildings and things. And so they're the last person to get resources, because it's not as much of a priority than the curriculum and things like that. So I would love to be a go-to guy for school counselors and be a resource to those guys as well. So those are kind of my two passions, and I don't know if that answered that question.
No, it did. It answered.
Those are the two things that I would love to see for the business, and I don't have any aspirations to be a Gary V, but I would like to be better at making some relevant content to help families with some of our coaching practices as well.
Well, you've already got a good start. I mean, like I said, that video was very good. I think if you kind of follow that outline, then it's, and you just kind of give the relevant points, I don't see how you can go wrong, because who else is out there doing it? I'm sure somebody is.
There are a lot,
right?
but they're selling more temporary or canned workshop, and versus we're trying to actually change lives, and that takes time, and so
it's it would be a different approach, a different audience, a different message, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter, right? The cream is always going to rise to the top, and your audience will find you, right? But they can't find you if you don't put anything out. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the point of all of this, right?
I mean, this is definitely outside of my comfort zone. I'm forcing myself as a challenge to grow professionally, is to do things that make me a little more uncomfortable than
you're doing great. So. You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
As I forget this is here, and then
but that's the whole point, right? And then. But then it's like we break the fourth one. We go, pay attention to this part, right? So who supported you the most on this journey, and how have they influenced your success?
You know, that's a really good question. I have to say, like, it's probably the people who have been doing this work. There was a guy, his name's Aaron, out in Hawaii, that was a guy that partnered with me on the last company that I worked, sold some of my technology products because it paired well with some of the stuff he was doing. He made the intro initially to some of the school counselor resources and said, hey, you know, if you're moving up to the East Coast, this company's based in Florida, you should talk to them. And that kind of started the conversation of like, well, could I do what Aaron's doing in Hawaii here in North Carolina? Or is there anybody else kind of doing this? And so I would say that Aaron really gave me some motivation and believed in me enough to make the intros to some of the folks here and to help me grow my network. And then student coaching, that was on me. Like I found them on my own. But I think the concept of being a reseller of products and services that are curated for, you know, either counselors or families or basically trying to impact lives. Like I think that Aaron helped me with that framework initially, and now I think I'm.
And you picked up the ball and ran with it.
I feel like it's ever evolving, right? You know, I have a cousin up in New Jersey who's a dyslexia specialist, and there are so many families that are struggling with helping their children read that I feel like she's not a salesperson, she's not a business owner, but she's got this amazing skill set that I would love to bring to more families. And so that's kind of what I hope, you know, will happen from all of this is that, you know, if I get enough relationships built that we can help change some lives of families in every regard, whether it's from a coaching perspective, whether it's from resources that a school counselor introduces in their school, or, you know, maybe helping kids read, you know, like those are some things, I guess.
Well, they're seeds, right? They're seeds, and it's different touch points. Yeah. And so, I mean, look, sometimes
I want to be a catalyst for change.
There you go. Right? Yeah. Well, and I think you're doing it.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, you are doing it. Yeah. It's not like you're talking about it; you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you're here and you're working, and it's going to, dude, it'll take off, man. Yeah. Like one thing that I've learned is that hard work always pays. Yeah. You know. But you can't get paid without work. but hard work always pays.
Well, I feel like the older I get, though, it's you have to analyze, is my effort today going towards helping me grow either personally, professionally, or financially, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times as business owners, we get stuck in some work that doesn't necessarily lead to us generating income. And I have to keep reminding myself of like, I don't get a steady paycheck anymore. So I have to make sure that I'm spending time every day on something that generates income. So
it's important. And if at all possible, the other thing, dude, get to a point as soon as you can, as fast as you can, where all of that non-income generating work you could just outsource.
Right. You know, that would be amazing. Like I've spent so much time lately on like logo design and redesign and and I'm man, I wish I just had somebody that could just do this.
Dude, I did, you know, all of the stuff, all my branding I did, because I'm creative like that. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And with all the software they have now, you can do it so much easily. Because before you had to like draw everything out. I was like, I can't draw. I had friends do that. I would tell them what I want. I'm like, no, tweak this. But like the logo on the door, that was all my idea. That's now, awesome. Again, I had a friend of mine who was working in graphics. I was like, this is what I want. I want the anchor surrounded by rope. I want it at an angle, and I want the words around. He's like, cool. I was like, and then I've been rolling with that for over, 12 years or something like that.
Yeah, never modified it. That's good.
Same thing.
So it's stuck, man. It's anchored into your
it's also
business.
We're in Wilmington and they call it the port city, so
it's like, I mean, it's relevant. You know, I've toyed around with using you know, some of those kinds of names. In fact, I initially started my business name as the Carolina Advisor, instead of Advisor, Ed for
I like that. I saw that on your website. I was like, oh, that's neat. I was like, I see what he did there.
But when I'm starting to get territories and having more of a national footprint with some of these things, I was like, well, that's going to be limiting. So then I had to kind of shift. And so right now I'm called K-12 Advisors as a business entity, but I'm figuring out what that's going to look like.
Something else will hit and it'll be like,
I don't know. I'm just playing with it right now. I'm just figuring it out, but it's working for now because it kind of explains what I do. I think the coaching kind of can stand on its own brand. I have my own cards for that organization, all branding for that organization, and my own, landing pages and stuff. So that kind of like almost works as a separate entity in some ways. But yeah, from a business owner perspective, it's, I get really hung up on some of the details of the creative, and because it doesn't always come to me. And
outsource it.
I know.
Get you a creative friend. It's like, oh, I could do that. It's like 5 minutes. I got something.
That's a struggle of mine. But I do like Canva. It's fun to play with.
Canva is so fun to play with, dude. That's
that's a few hours of my day lately. That's
You're like, I'm not getting paid for this, but it's fun.
I know. Is this brand really going to generate more income than the last logo that I had? I don't know.
It's like maybe, but it's fun. This is neat. Look what I can do. What does this do? So, your vision for the future. You spoke a little bit about it before, but what do you see? What do you see the business in the next 5 years? What's the dream? What are you doing to get there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm in talks with adding a couple more resources, 2 or 3 new resources. I would love to have, maybe 10 to 15 total services that my team can go out and sell, one of them being coaching. But from a coaching perspective, what I would love to see is, I think we have 12 coaches right now. I would love to see 30, 40 coaches, and us rivaling the income that our business coaching division has, because right now they're kind of like the cream of the crop. Like they're showing some really amazing stuff, and they're really amazing business coaches over there. But I would love to give them a run for their money. We're gonna have to put more bodies and seats or whatever, because our price point's a lot lower than business coaching. But I would love to be like, we're so on the map that they're all looking at what we're doing.
They're like, wait a second, they did what? They did what in revenue? Oh man.
We're gonna have to put more butts in seats, and we're gonna have more coaches. But my vision is, right now the hybrid model is essentially like you coach and you sell, because we're trying to grow as an organization. I would love to have a team of my own that I just pick really amazing coaches that can make that impact, and then some biz dev folks that just go out there and evangelize the product for us, and just help grow it, and then maybe travel a little bit more. And take some personal time and spend some time with my kids. I mean, in the next 5 years, my kid's going to be off to college. He's in 8th grade right now. So,
mine's in 6th.
Yeah. So I've got a 4th grader too. So I've got time, but I've got 2 of them. But in 5 years, I would like to be able to successfully fund some of that education, and not feel like this was all just a pipe dream. So.
Well, but either way, let's say you don't. Well, what do they still have? They still have an example of a father who is always helping other people, who is helping them the best they can, who is hustling, who is this, who is that. So the example that they have of you is like, here's Dad. What is he doing? Well, he's doing this. He's doing this. He's doing this. He's doing this. Like Gary Vee's dad. He wasn't funding much. Gary Vee was like, he couldn't even go to where the alcohol was. He just could only fill up the ice machine. So it's like. And he didn't do that. And plus, Gary, too, by his own admission, was an awful student. He was like a C student at best, and he hated school anyway. But
I love the video of his teacher coming to one of his book signings, and like legit, like the authenticity of the tears that he shed, because this was the one woman in his high school that, even though he wasn't academically good, she saw in him his potential, and always encouraged him, and always said, you just be you, man. Like, I see big things for you. And he remembers that person. Because everybody else said, oh, you're a D student. Like,
you're never going to go anywhere.
There's no value here, right? And she never saw him that way. She always saw him and like who he was. And so I that resonated with me a lot, because I have ADHD myself, often wasn't the best student. And so seeing how that exchange happened, I don't know, it resonated with me a lot.
Well, and it goes back to why he might value kindness as the number one characteristic, right? Because she was the only one that was kind to him, to say good, nice words to him and encouraging words to him, when everybody else was like, he's never going to be nothing,
And his hand knitted Jets jersey that his mom made for him, that he wants to buy the Jets and hang in the
hang in the box or the office or whatever.
Sorry about my Steelers the other day.
Hey, whatever, man. Like, I was a Panthers fan for like 10 years, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
It's hard. It's hard.
Like,
you got my Deontay Johnson from the Steelers. I mean, he maybe, you can't do everything now.
I'm not even watching. I don't even have time to watch it anymore,
We're going to cut this out because, I don't want, somebody coming after me like Antonio Brown.
Steelers fans are everywhere, man.
Steeler Nation.
So the legacy, when people talk about you and the business years from now, what do you hope they'll say?
So that's really fun. I think I'm at an age now where I'm thinking about legacy a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was just out there hustling for so many of my years, just to find an income and whatever. I still align myself with things that I enjoyed work. But for a legacy perspective, I hope to show my kids, what you can do with your own business or creation to impact a lot of lives positively. And for me, I would love to be more active in volunteering and be on some boards for music related causes. One of the things we didn't talk about is I have a background in music. I was a music major 100 years ago. Music therapy, of course, because helping was always a theme in my life. But I would love to be more active in that piece of my life and perhaps perform more often again. So
really?
That's another legacy. I want my kids to remember me as a musician, not a former musician.
Right.
But my kids are kind of musical themselves, so I may be a distant memory in that.
I was in a punk rock band for 6 years, dude.
Oh, nice.
I had a foot tall mohawk that was
awesome.
Bleached with flame tips on it. And my son, who's 11, he's never known me as that. But my daughter, when she was that age, that's what I was doing.
Oh, wow.
And so we went all over the place, man. But so my daughter remembers that part of me, right? So she got to see that. But and it's like, I'll do something or say something. My son will look at me and I'll be like, rock and roll, son. That's it.
I have a trumpet player, and I have the trumpet at the house. I even have a tattoo related to the trumpet, and on my back, and it's so silly because I can't even remember I have it half the time. It's on my back. But the kids are always asking me to play the trumpet at the house. I'm like, it's so loud, and I haven't practiced. But clearly they want to see that part of me. So that's part of my legacy. I'd like to.
What was your? Because I played trumpet too when I was in middle school. Yeah. Dude, I was third chair just right off the bat because I was naturally okay. Yeah. And I had no idea about challenges, and I was like, and so the fourth chair was a girl who was like way more ambitious than I was, but I just had better tone, right? Yeah. I never studied. I never did any of that. I could just show up and play. I could sight read fairly well, and if I got the rhythm, I could just get in there and do it. Yeah. And she wanted that first chair, right? Mm-hmm. The first chair first and second chair they were just ambitious. They studied. They wanted it. That's why I was third, because I never cared as much as they did, right? Yeah. But I was equal with my ability to both of those. I just didn't I didn't want it. Yeah. But this girl next to me, Cindy, she wanted it, and she would challenge me every week.
That's awesome.
And so,
funny story with that. So I was a cello player, which I thought wasn't cool. In hindsight, it's a beautiful instrument, beautiful music, but it is I think it was my 8th grade year or late in my 7th grade year. I was like, I want to make band because they go on cool trips. The orchestra doesn't go on cool trips. Right. So, when you get to high school, I want to play the trumpet.
That's true, though. That's true.
Yeah, so I was like, I want to play the trumpet. And so I was, a little cocky about it. And I was like, I'm going to switch instruments. I'll be fine. I know, how to play music. And so I didn't make band my freshman year.
Crushed.
Yeah. So they put you in the B band, and it's like a class in school. Band is a class too, but anyway, so the band director at the time happened to be a trumpet player, and so he gave private lessons. So on top of having this these lessons every day, like the guy in the room has a trumpet to like show me how it's supposed to sound and how it's supposed to go. And so like it really was very helpful. And by next year, I was sitting in the second trumpet section. By senior year, I was always battling between my buddy and I, first and second chair. But your story about challenging, there was this savant freshman kid that came in. Really good. Yeah. For freshmen, really good. And I remember band director was realizing we were getting a little senioritis, getting lazy, getting all those things. So this kid challenged us.
Yes.
Kicked our butts. I got the whole trumpet section together, and I was like, we're all
taking him down.
And we got him back to the third trumpet section, which was the architect of the band director's plan, and the whole thing was to get us to be leaders and to get us. We didn't see that at the time, but we realized we did exactly what he wanted us to do, and we did it. But I remember that being super motivating and very humbling.
Oh yeah, because when there's a young kid who's coming up, and you're like,
we were seniors.
It was just like when Jimi Hendrix came on the scene, and like Pete Townsend and all the other guitarists at the time were like, dude, he's gonna take our jobs.
Yeah.
Because they went to go see him in these little theaters, and they're like, like that's what's coming up, man. We better get to it.
So I always tell my kids, I was like, I went from a guy that didn't make band his freshman year of high school to being in college on music scholarships.
See, there you go.
I mean, that was the grit and the
proper motivation.
Yeah, I had the drive. I really loved the instrument. I loved, like you said, tone quality and stuff like that. And I think I'm a home theater aficionado, and I truly believe like good sound came from my trumpet player days because everything was about tone quality, and I feel like I have more expensive speakers than I should have, but in my home, but I enjoy it sounding really good.
Look, you're an audiophile, right? And I have I'm a bit of an audiophile too, man. When I moved down here, I had a album collection that probably stretched 3/4 of this wall.
Nice.
And I had to get rid of all that because I was like, I'm not moving all this stuff. I had 3 turntables. All of it's gone, you know. But that's all my Steely Dan records, man.
But that trumpet player teacher used to take us home from school in his conversion van, which now seems inside a little creepy.
Right.
But one of the things I remember about it is he had a Nakamichi head unit, and he had all these like Boston acoustic speakers. So that guy, I think, really was my origin story for my audiophile days. Was this guy? He had
you see what like real gear is. It's like
I didn't even know those things existed. Like
what is this?
I don't even know where he got those things. You know. And then I started looking at Crutchfield magazines and things like.
Oh gosh, don't do that. You'll be in there for days.
But anyway, but I feel like the trumpet has definitely influenced a lot of my life too. So.
Yeah, music is wonderful, man. It's a gift that keeps on giving, and we can give it to our kids. Like, do you know how many young kids? Like, I'm 52 years old, dude, and I've got young kids coming in here and they're wearing like Beatles shirts, Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, and I'm like, I'll just look at them and go, cool shirt. What's your favorite song? And then they list me like 3 or 4 songs, and I was like, I was like, this is not your era. Who told you to listen to this band? And they'll say, my mom or my dad. And then I'll say, you go back and you tell them that I approve.
My son's a drummer, and he's 14, and he listens to Rage Against the Machine and Nirvana and Blink-182, like all these no current bands. Well, I guess some of them are still making music, but he listens to all the stuff of our childhood, and our teen years, and so it's pretty amazing. And the Beatles were way before our time, and they're still relevant today, which is pretty freaking cool.
I appreciate the time, man. Thank you for coming in. And it was great, man.
Yeah.
And you'll have a lot of stuff from this, and we got some good stories out of it. So
cool, man.
Next time we'll catch you on the Business Builder Podcast.